Howdy, folks. Happy Friday. Thank God it's Friday. Got an interesting pre-show here. It's focused on me being just a grouch at this holiday season, which I don't really mind. And Russ and I did not coordinate. We're about the same
These are different colors. Now, this is more brownish.
Yeah, this is maroon.
And this is from a famous TV show.
And it's not maroon gray, folks. It's maroon.
It does look maroon gray, but anyhow.
It does look maroon gray. We're joined by Jan Levine for a little for part of the show. Hopefully.
Hey guys, sorry about that.
No problem. I'm just going to do our pre-show thing here. First of all, this is the time of year of annoying commercials. My level of annoyance is lower than most, but
Really?
Anybody watching the NHL Network who sees the J.G. Wentworth commercials, I don't know how you can stay sane. First of all, it's a commercial. I mean, it's a commercial aimed at the 0.1% of the population that has an insurance settlement and wants their money right away.
I'm going to say it's the 1/10 of the population that actually likes opera.
Yeah, well, that too. Yeah, right. Exactly. It's like they got these people from Broadway who have probably been laid off because nobody wants to see that crap anymore.
Stop it, Mike.
Oh my God, it's true. It's like,
This is
Coming from a person who lives up in upstate New York and doesn't go to Broadway that often.
I would go to Broadway. There are Broadway shows that come to Buffalo, and I have been to one.
From the Buffalo.
They do.
I guess that's a literal term of shuffle off to Buffalo was written from Michael Jello to go to see Broadway.
Hamilton was here. I wouldn't see that piece of crap, but it was here.
Oh, Mike, you're really damaging your reputation even more than possible, and I didn't think that was allowed.
I will just say this. I have a general rule of thumb for commercials like that and for musicals. And that's for movies, not for Broadway. If you want to go to Broadway, I don't, go see Broadway. I don't see a lot. I've only seen a handful in my life. I don't believe people walk down the street singing and dancing and clicking their heels every day of the week like they do on that bus. That's what bothers me.
Well, okay, and transitioning to the other commercial that's extremely annoying right now, and we're getting inundated with it, is the stupid Amazon commercial with the singing boxes. And it starts with this little girl on a little piano doing the Blues Brothers, everybody needs somebody to love.
Right.
I've seen that commercial. Give me $1 for every time I've seen that commercial, and I could buy myself an Xbox 360 or an Xbox One or whatever the newest one is. It's ridiculous. It's like, enough. Can we just have like one commercial, say every couple hours? It's like it's one commercial like every commercial break. It's the same friggin' one.
Then you'll be cutting into the revenue stream of the show, Mike. And so you know what? You're just going to have to live with it.
Okay, now I told Russ what I wanted to talk about, and he laughed hysterically at this. I don't think it's very funny, but there was a few months ago, there was a big rush for people who love chicken sandwiches because Popeyes came out with a chicken sandwich. And everybody who apparently has either problems with Chick-fil-A being closed on Sundays or with their politics or whatever, they glommed onto Popeyes and said, oh my God, we got to try. And they sold all these chicken sandwiches, and they basically sold out the chicken, the reserve stock of the chicken sandwich for literally months, because I have one near where I live, and they had a little poster on the door that said, sorry, no chicken sandwiches. And literally for two and a half months, they had the thing up. It's like, okay, so yesterday I drive by Popeyes and the poster is not on there. And I go in and they have the chicken sandwich. And I buy the chicken sandwich and I eat it and I'm like, what the hell was the big deal? This thing is not any better than Chick-fil-A. In fact, I think Chick-fil-A is a better sandwich. I had to wait 3 months for that piece of crap.
Right. So here's my response. I ended up eating it one day because I go to Popeyes once in a while. It was on the menu before all the craziness. And I thought it was very average, and I thought the brioche bread was heavy. So what you're saying is not untrue. What the problem I have here with Michael Jello is the minute you have a build-up for Mike and tell him something is going to be good, it could never live up to expectations. Imagine this guy on Christmas morning. You know, the Hot Wheels he gets, if they don't do loop-de-loops like on TV, he probably broke it and said, this thing sucks.
Well, hey, all I expect is live up to expectations. You know, no, I'm serious. I'm not making lofty expectations. You know, I haven't watched all of The Irishman, but
hold on.
But
Jan,
so far, The Irishman is.
We have another guest here. Jan, did you try the sandwich?
No, you know I can't anyway. So.
Well, I mean, yeah, that's true. Okay, go ahead. I hadn't forgotten.
The Irishman is a movie that everybody, you know, when they heard De Niro, Pacino, Pesci, Scorsese, oh my God, this is gonna be the world's greatest thing. I've watched the first half of it. I haven't gotten around to the second half yet. It's really good. Has it lived up to expectations? No, because I was thinking it's like Goodfellas plus Scarface.
Why would you think that, though?
But it's still really good. No. I mean, I'm not disappointed with it, but when in your mind's eye, when you hear the combination of actors, the director, or like in the other sense,
the actors are 85 years old. Like, I thought it was good.
Right.
I had to watch it in like 3 steps because I couldn't take it all in one viewing. And I thought it was good. It wasn't in the vein of Godfather or anything as far as good.
Right.
But again, that would be like me saying, hey, I'm going to start grading myself. Let me go look at myself playing basketball when I'm 20 and I'm playing it now. It's the same thing with these guys. It's like if I'm going to start looking at De Niro like in Taxi Driver and looking at him today, clearly there's a drop-off.
Dean Youngblood says, Scarface, question mark. I'm like,
Scarface sucks. Here's the thing. Scarface is a piece of crap because you take out the F word, half the movie is gone.
Well, yeah.
Yeah, but you have to argue that Pacino was excellent in that movie.
No, he was good, but it was just.
And so was Penelope Ann Miller, and so was several others. Who
no, that's Carlito's Way.
Sorry.
But the problem, Jan, was it was too far over the top.
Yeah,
that was the problem with it.
Okay, I won't disagree with you, but.
It was written by Oliver Stone and it was directed by Brian De Palma. And Brian De Palma, except for like The Untouchables and a couple other movies, every one of his movies is over the top.
They could have halved the budget and they would have been okay. Yeah. There's no way they used that many bullets in real life for any of that stuff.
And apparently that the Say Hello to My Little Friends scene, I just watched a documentary on Spielberg. He directed that scene. I guess him and De Palma are friends. So Kevin in the chat says, Russ, can you replace Mike with your cat?
My cat is currently not here at the moment, but we'll be in discussions.
She's holding out.
Cat and a player to be named later.
All right. Hello, Hockey World. Today is Friday, December the 13th, 2019.
It's Friday the 13th, and I'm Russ Cohen from Sportsology.
And it should be notable that it's Friday the 13th, given how Mike started the show. So,
and I'm Michael Lagello, and this is the Hockey Buzzcast here on HockeyBuzz.com. All right, we'll start with Ranger related material. There's a lot of stuff to talk about today, but we touched on it yesterday. The news that Vitaly Kravtsov, the Rangers' first round pick from 2 years ago, right?
2018.
Now he was playing in Hartford. He had a European return clause in his ELC. He decided to go back to the KHL. He was playing or was assigned to play for Tractor Chelyabinsk, and I'm not sure. I think the reason why he was not playing regularly there.
Right. So I can give you the story. So that's what I spoke about at the beginning of the show because I have somebody over there. So basically, he was on the team. They didn't like the way he played. They sent him down to juniors. He didn't want to be in juniors, so they tried to trade him. Nobody wanted him.
Right.
So the fact that nobody wanted him, then that was what precipitated him leaving and coming back here. Now, we don't know what's going to happen when he comes back here. I'm assuming he's going to Hartford, but we don't know. So that part's the unexplained. And when I broke it on the show yesterday, even the part of him definitely leaving wasn't 100% because they were still trying to find a team that would take him, but nobody would take him. So, now we're at the point where, and this is what I said yesterday, and for people who missed it, I'll say it again. I feel bad because now it looks like he's a kid that is demanding and isn't happy where he is, and he's going to get all these tags on him. And really, all he wanted to do was play. Right. And the Hartford thing, we don't know. Like, we're never going to know exactly what didn't fit there. But he's also young and immature, so we have to give some slack.
Jan, what do you think of this situation?
So I've written it a couple times. You may have read it. So, I mean, I kind of agree with Russ on a bunch of the stuff. So, as you said, 19-year-old kid in the U.S. for the first time, adjusting to a different culture, to a different style of life. Now, granted, Yegor Regov, who's one of his friends, probably wasn't playing earlier in the season, which didn't help, but he had Shesterkin there, which is one of the guys that he knew from the KHL to help him get settled in. You looked at a 19-year-old kid who probably expected to make the Rangers out of training camp, dealt with the disappointment of not making the team and going from the NHL to the AHL, struggled with that adaptation despite having a couple of people that can assist him in that, most likely got homesick, probably had a bunch of people from where he was questioning why he didn't make the NHL and probably dealing with that disappointment and the pressure from his hometown. And he figured, I'll go for the quote-unquote easier way out, and I'll go back home, and things will be perfect, and I can always come back down the road, which is why, I give the Rangers credit for working with him by making him a loan as opposed to just shipping him there, which enabled him to come back, right? Then he gets over there. He has to readapt to a different style of play, readapt to a different size of the ice surface, and also learn a new system all over again, which he probably struggled with. And granted, you read the articles that came out, and part of it's lost in translation, for lack of a better term, and he was probably depressed, probably dealing with the challenges of readapting as well. It didn't go well for him, as Russ said, which is why he ended up down in the VHL as opposed to the KHL. Didn't particularly want to be down at that level because it's granted he's moving from the top level to a second level.
And he already played at that level and really did well. So that's the other thing.
Yeah.
Right. So Rangers will bring him back. He'll play in Hartford. He'll have Regev is there now that can help him. He has Shesterkin that's there now also that can help him. The organization, I'm sure, will probably provide some more resources to help him with his adaptation. And the thing that I'd point to, which is the thing that I think we wanted initially, was look at what Philip Hedl did, right? He went down. He was clearly disappointed about not making the team out of training camp. He dominated down in the AHL, and now he's back and he's centering the second line. That's a very clear evidence point that can show him and say, look, if you work hard and if your game warrants it, we will bring you up to the NHL when we think that you're ready. It's not an issue with the entry-level contract because it's technically been burned already, right? It's not not an ELC issue, so they're not going to stash him there. It's not the play 10 games and go to juniors. So there's a lot of factors that are positive is a bad word, but ones that point in the right direction where if he settles in, puts this behind him, plays like I think we're capable of seeing him play like we saw at times during training camp, there is a decent possibility he's up with the team come, let's say, February time, in my opinion.
Well, not to say that everything is money related, because I don't think it's the case, and you guys have laid it out pretty good. But just to lay out the entry level aspect of his contract compared to what he could have made in the KHL. You know, he signed an ELC. It's when you're in the American Hockey League, it's $70,000 US.
Yep.
So he probably saw. Now, I'm not saying that there wasn't the homesick factor. There wasn't, I don't know if he was playing every game down in Hartford, but I'm sure he would have, if he would have been playing for Tractor, he would have been making more than $70,000. Now, I'm going to tie this into what just came out this morning. The KHL is implementing a salary cap for the upcoming season, 2020-2021. The floor is $4.3 million. The ceiling is 14.4. If you have a team that's a budget team, you're not going to have players making over a couple hundred, probably most of them will be making a couple $100,000 and maybe less. This is going to be a boon for the NHL and the American Hockey League because these players are going to be able to be playing in North America, and the money will be comparable. So I think this is you're going to see an influx of Russian players that may have stayed in the KHL, and they'll either play in the SHL or in Finland, or they'll come over to the NHL.
Yeah, if you remember, I thought the AHL was going to make some sort of adjustment because I was hearing rumblings that Russians might come over and maybe they would accommodate. Well, clearly Russians are going to come over, and it's the KHL that's actually going to force them to come over, because even like where Kravtsov was, that place doesn't pack them in. So $14 million, they probably don't even want to spend to the cap.
Right.
But going back to Kravtsov, I said it draft day, and I'll say it again. That wouldn't have been my my choice. It doesn't mean I'm telling you he's going to be a bust either. Mm-hmm. It's just one of those things where I felt like they were trying to hit a home run with him, and they still might. I still would have taken Middlestat. I still would have taken Wahlstrom, either one of them over him, but that's me. So the Rangers did this, and I agree with Jan. I think they're trying to work this out the right way. And unfortunately now I think fans have a bad feeling about him, but it's too early for that.
Now, so let me add a couple of things. So we've talked a couple of times about a couple of the drafts. You look at that draft, and you look at the year, like for example, the year Anderson was taken, right? Mm-hmm. You look at the year when Anderson was taken, and you go from 8 to 14, and none of those guys are really doing much. Even Necas, who was hot, isn't particularly doing much. You look at Middlestat, you look at some of the other guys. It's interesting if you did a redraft now, where certain guys would go even only a couple of years later, because that whole top part of the first round to the middle part of the first round doesn't impress you much. And you go further down with guys like Robert Thomas, with guys like Hedl, they almost look better than the guys. Once you get past that top 5 or 6 in the upper part of the draft, now you're all throwing guys into a whole mix, and you're hopefully pulling out the right one where none of them has really dominated at any point so far.
I mean, again, with Anderson, I felt like what the Rangers did there was they were looking for a player that was physically ready to play in the NHL as soon as possible. So they did that. They rolled those dice, and now they're seeing that it's a little bit tougher than that. And so I wouldn't have taken him in that draft. Like that wasn't – I like the guy, but I wouldn't have taken him there. Actually, I'm trying to think with Anderson, I'm trying to look it up. Who I would have taken.
I know LA was supposedly interested and Carolina was supposedly interested, is why they took him, right? And it's interesting. We've talked a lot about it.
But you know what? I'm going to throw all that out. All of that's garbage.
Hedl and him, nobody's probably saying a word.
All of that's garbage, Jan, because I can't tell you how many years we have heard all of this stuff like, hey, the Rangers had to draft McElrath because these other teams would have taken him. We don't know that.
I didn't want McElrath anyway. We all want
but I'm just saying we've heard the excuses.
Yeah.
But yes, I would have taken Middlestat over Anderson. I would have taken Tippett over him. I would have taken Velarde, Necas.
Right. Velarde was the one that all of us wanted. The problem with Velarde now is is health related. I mean, that's his big issue is his back.
And I look at the draft with Kraftstoff, and the two that stand out are Dobson and Bouchard. But
we don't know what either one of them are going to become yet either.
Oh, right? No. Dobson's going to be
we expect what they will become. We haven't seen it yet, is my point.
Dobson and Wahlstrom. I said.
Well, you wanted Wahlstrom, right? And the question is, we don't know how Wahlstrom's going to pan out. He wasn't particularly good at BC.
Those would have been the two I would have gone after.
And I think we all thought Wahlstrom was going to go as opposed to Kravtsov. It's going to be the big comparison in New York between the two because it's two New York teams.
Jan, I know you only have a few minutes, so I wanted to ask you this because we talked about this, and it's going to probably be an ongoing subject for the next few months until the deadline with Georgiev and Shesterkin down in Hartford, and the talk of maybe them trading Georgiev before before he plays 60 games and has
not going to happen.
Right. I mean, I heard Elliot Friedman this morning on Toronto radio say that it's possible that they just want to keep all three of them and, wait until after Lundqvist retires at the end of next year, if he does retire. And then, Shesterkin would have a exemption from the expansion draft. So you wouldn't have to lose any one of them. But the problem is that means playing Shesterkin down in Hartford for another year.
So I've written about this a whole bunch in like pretty much every column the last couple of weeks, right? So a couple of things, you've touched on it. Just Georgiev, when he hit 60 games, in essence, is waiver exempt from the AHL. I think he's at 58 now.
Right.
There was rumors about a week ago that Brooks wrote with 4 games coming up on the West Coast, maybe sending him down now and bringing up Shesterkin and try to slow play for him hitting the 60 games. The other factors you talked about is Lundqvist is signed for this year and next year. His contract expires at the end of next year, which means he's going to be ineligible for the expansion draft because he's not going to be under contract unless you sign him again at that point in time.
Right.
Georgiev is going to be an RFA. He's going to be an RFA after his contract ends, and he's also going to be eligible to be exposed in the expansion draft because he will have played 3 years by that point in time. Shesterkin, regardless of when he comes up, because it'll only be 2 years, this year and next year, he's exempt from the expansion draft. So let's throw all that to the side. Let's talk about play. It's hard to argue that Georgiev hasn't been better than Lundqvist. Though Lundqvist, if you look at his advanced metrics, they've left him out to dry, which you look at what Sean Gentile has done in terms of his metrics, you can see just how bad the Rangers have been defensively, and they haven't improved much. And Lundqvist, despite his numbers not being as good as Georgiev, has been pretty good in net based upon what he's seen in terms of his saves above replacement.
He definitely has
average above replacement. My view, and I wrote about this, is a nice problem to have, right? This is one of those, the big specter that's looming that you referenced to, and Russ, and we talked about already, is his ability to go back to the AHL. Kravtsov used that opt-out clause. There's no guarantee that Shesterkin won't use that opt-out clause because he's going to want to be a number one. The challenge the Rangers have is explaining to him and trying to keep him satisfied, saying, look, you are part of the future here. You and Georgiev right now are part of the future. Now, if we're going to be able to trade Georgiev and get a ransom, which means don't offer me a third-round pick, Toronto. I have no interest in your third-round pick for a guy who may be my number one down the road. To me, that's not enough. You can throw out the arguments with Cam Talbot. You can throw out the arguments with Antti Raanta. It's Georgiev is 24 years old. He's not 28 or 29 and looking on to move to another team, right? He's a guy who's built up through the system, who's developed under Benoit Allaire for several years now. He's going to be relatively cheap. Even if you're paying him, let's say you give him Philippe Grubauer money. Let's say you give him 3 years, $10 million to keep him, which might even be an overpay. Right. If you put him and Shesterkin in net, you're still paying $4 or $5 million combined for two potential number one goalies, right, which is still pretty good cap savings and a good use of the cap when Lundqvist leaves in about a year or so. And also, we don't know what Lundqvist is going to do after the year. I don't foresee him retiring. I don't foresee him going to use his no movement clause. You're kind of, quote unquote, stuck with him. But as a mentor and a guy you can keep there because you bring up Shesterkin, it's $800,000. It's a pretty good problem to have when you know you're set net and don't have to worry who you're putting between the types every single night.
Oh, I go ahead, Russ.
My big
I gotta run. I gotta get my daughter from school.
Okay.
So I'll listen to your response, Russ, later when I get home.
Okay. My big answer is they can't hold on to all three. They know that. That's not going to happen. When a long time ago, when the Rangers had Richter and Van Beesbroek, they held on to him for a while until they couldn't. Right. And that was basically because one of them had to be the number one, and they wanted the younger guy to be the number one. That makes sense. Well, that's what Shesterkin is. It's not what Georgiev is. Georgiev is the nice surprise here. Right. So the nice surprise is trade him now before the Christmas holiday so you don't have to worry about the gain factor, and bring up Shesterkin, who clearly wants to be in the NHL. If they tell him next year you're going to play in Hartford to start, he's going to bolt.
Yeah, he's going to bolt. And that's the worst case scenario for them.
That is the worst case.
Because then they have to they have to put up a goaltender in the expansion draft that meets the criteria that Jan was talking about. And that means probably having to sign Lundqvist before free agency, so he is eligible, even though I think Seattle wouldn't take a 39-year-old goaltender. He's gonna, I don't think the Rangers might have to give Seattle something to prevent them from doing it. Maybe they'd threaten to do it, but yeah, it's not a good situation. And I mean, Jan intimated
Lundqvist will do what we talked about and stay a free agent until after the expansion draft.
Yeah, but they do have to make a goalie available. And the thing is,
they can. They've got other goalies in their system.
Yeah, but they have to play a certain amount of NHL time. That's the thing.
They'll pick somebody up next year for that.
Well, that they might they might have to.
They'll sign somebody next year in the offseason for that.
Yeah, like J.F. Berube.
Right. I mean, somebody like that. The idea is this. Lundqvist will decide what he's going to do. I know Ranger fans wanted him traded 2 years ago. If you go listen to the Stick to Hockey podcast, I spoke about that with Brian Boucher. He gave the answer. Okay. Beyond that, he's not leaving New York. He wants to be there.
Yeah.
So if in 2 years Henrik Lundqvist wants to stay and sign another year, the Rangers will sign him for another year cheap because, again, why wouldn't you have him with a tandem with Shesterkin? You're not going to just throw that guy in and start giving him 60 games a year. There's going to be a process. So I think Lundqvist being part of that process is good. He's a good teammate, and he's good to have in case you need a big win here or there. If you go back and look at Rangers lore, they've had plenty of older goaltenders that have done well if they have the same sort of pedigree that Lundqvist has. I mean, you go look at Lundqvist's save percentage, it's still .911. And and the other day he had a fantastic game. He is under siege though most games. So what we've talked about the last 2 years with him is he starts off great and then he does have a tailing off point. But now that they have Georgiev playing this great, they can manage his games better. So I don't think that's going to happen with him now.
And what Jan, when he referenced Toronto and them with Georgiev, that's the problem. Toronto is not going to pay what Georgiev is naturally worth. I mean, they should get at least a second-round pick. They should maybe get a really good prospect. I don't think Toronto is going to trade that kind of capital for a backup goaltender. So, I mean,
it may not even be that. I mean, that's what Jan says. Maybe Jeff Gordon's got his eyes on a prospect that Toronto doesn't really value, and not talking about Bracco, but somebody else. And he saes, just give me that guy. They might do that.
And if that's the case, then I think they would do it. But I mean, at
the end of the day, Shesterkin knows he can play pro hockey. He has been treated as a number one his whole time in Russia. He is not going to play a year and a half in Hartford. He's not.
No. All right. Let's
have to deal with this. So their choices are you trade Georgiev now before the break, or you play in one more game and tell them we got to send you to Hartford for the rest of the year, because otherwise teams will start to claim you, and we'll take care of this in the summer, and then they'll take care of it at the draft. But I think that's the worst way to do it.
Now, I didn't go to the game last night. Talking about some of the games, the Sabres played Nashville, beat them 4-3. It was odd night at the KeyBank Center, so they adorned the seats in the at the arena in the colors of the
cool.
Which I thought was really cool. And Jack Eichel continues to be absolutely red hot, and the Sabres have won a couple games in a row at home. Actually, I think it's 3 in a row now. They beat Edmonton in overtime.
Everybody's happy on that team, right?
Well, no, and that's where I'm leading here. Zach Bogosian, that wonderful teammate, had before the game yesterday, per Darren Drager, requested a trade. Now, I would have to think that when he saw the lineup that day and he was going to be a healthy scratch. I mean, most of the time, this guy who is basically, I mean, he cannot stay healthy. He's been, I mean, I think it's around 8 or 9 games that he's played this year.
He's better than at this point.
Say that again?
In that lineup, who does he feel he's better than?
Well, he probably feels he's better than Scandella.
Arguable. I don't think so.
He probably feels he's better than Yoki Haru because he's
no way. I mean, Yoki Haru.
I'm saying he thinks. I'm not saying I think, because I think honestly, I think for the bang for the buck, he's the worst defenseman on the team. He's played 10 games so far this year with 3 assists. So, and he was out for the last portion of last year and the first 20, 22, 23 games with a shoulder problem. He was on LTIR, which he's been off and on since they got him from Winnipeg in 2015. Now, the situation here, though, is Buffalo, I think, believes they're in contention for a playoff spot. And right now, the way they're playing, they are. I still don't believe that, because right now they're wholly dependent on Eichel being a superstar, scoring a couple goals a game. He's going to cool down. I think he's still a great player, but he's not going to score at the rate he's scoring right now. And they don't really have the secondary scoring if Eichel isn't scoring a couple goals a game. So now, that being said, there has been talk about Alex Galchenyuk. Friedman mentioned that a couple days ago. And if you look at it, it makes that kind of deal. I'm not saying it's guaranteed, because I'm just putting 2 and 2 together, but that deal makes a lot of sense. Galchenyuk needs a change of scenery in Pittsburgh. He's not going to play, according to Rutherford. He's making $4.9 million. He's a rental. His contract is up at the end of the year. Bogosian has his flies. You know, he's got his problems. Durability is being one of them. Pittsburgh needs defense. Dumoulin is out long term. We know that Letang and we know that Schultz get hurt when they get breathed on the wrong way. So I think that's a possibility. I'm not saying it's a guarantee, but I think that's a possibility that kind of deal happens.
I think there's a possibility. I'm looking up something. So when he got drafted 3rd overall, I remember Zach Bogosian, and I felt like he had gotten overhyped for the U.S. system. But when he got drafted, Mike, was he drafted as a stalwart defenseman or was he drafted as an offensive defenseman?
I think he was drafted as sort of an all aspect defenseman. He was good offensively, size, like remember he was drafted third after Doughty and before Pietrangelo. So yeah, it went and this is 08. It went Stamkos, Doughty, Bogosian, Pietrangelo, Luke Schenn.
Right.
He's closer to Luke Schenn than he is Pietrangelo or Doughty.
Actually, he might not even be close to Luke Schenn. Right now,
at least Luke Schenn's durable.
Right. Right now, he has played 627 games, and he's got 192 points. Luke Schenn played 747 games, still playing 146 points. It's pretty close. And the thing is, Bogosian's been a bitter disappointment. So is Schenn, if you want to go by where he's drafted.
Yeah.
But nobody expected offense out of Luke Schenn. Everybody wanted Luke Schenn for his toughness and his defensive ability, and that just wasn't as good as it was supposed to be. But if I told you Luke Schenn was going to be close to point-wise in his career to Zach Bogosian, you'd be like, what's wrong with Zach Bogosian? Because Luke Schenn should not be near him in points.
And just to remind everybody, 12 picks after Bogosian, Ottawa took a guy named Carlson.
Yeah, I mean, again.
And 24 picks after Bogosian, the Capitals took a guy named Carlson.
Yeah. I had that Carlson we've talked about. I mean, the Flyers traded for Steve Eminger. They could have drafted him. But they traded a first-round pick for Steve Eminger. That was
and they took Lucas Spiza.
Yeah, that's on them. But as far as Erik Karlsson, I wrote really great things about him because he was great on the power play in the World Juniors. And even though he was skinny, it's just hard to believe he would drop to that. But everybody was going with size then, so Zach Bogosian had size. Well, guess what? He still has size, and he's never had more than 30 points in a season, and his last highest point season was 2 years ago at 19 points and 5 years ago at 24. So this year he's played 10 games, and he's got 3 points. Exactly for his salary, who really wants him?
Right, and that's why I think that
does Tom Waddell want him? I mean, because maybe trade him to Carolina. I bet you he doesn't.
Well, and that's why I thought the Galchenyuk deal that would make the most sense because he's got negatives. So does Bogosian. They have almost equal cap hits. There's the need for Buffalo is forward. The need for Pittsburgh is defense. It makes a lot of sense. Now, the only thing that doesn't make sense is if Rutherford doesn't like Bogosian, then maybe it would be Marco Scandella, who's another rental free, unrestricted free agent. But I think that deal has a possibility, but we'll see. Now, I have to, because somebody is bringing up in the chat here. Yeah. Mark Hodges says, anyone have a clue what Buffalo is offering for? I haven't heard the same.
I haven't heard about this rumor, but if I were Buffalo, I would offer like Middlestat and a second. That's what I would offer.
Well, this is the funny thing.
I still have to sign them.
Yeah, this is the funny thing. Apparently, from what some interpret, if the Sabres did get a guy like Galchenyuk, what would probably happen is that they would probably send Middlestat down to Rochester. I don't think they're ready to trade Middlestat for a rental like Kreider. I mean, Kreider is really good. I don't think the Sabres.
Unless they have a feeling he'll sign there. I tend to agree.
Right. And then, I don't know about that. I mean, if that's the case, then you could probably expect in the summer Sam Reinhart to get traded because they can't sign Reinhart and a guy like Kreider who they trade. Right. So, I mean, that'll be the interesting case. But
maybe they trade Reinhart for Kreider because they think they could sign Kreider and they can't sign Reinhart. That could happen too.
Right. Or they don't think that because Reinhart could score 25 to 30 goals. And if he does that for like the second year in a row, then you're talking paying $7 million for him. And it's a question of whether they think he'd be worth that. So,
right.
Okay. So some of the other games last night, we'll start with there's a few interesting outcomes. I just have to, because Tortorella is always interesting. And
you heard the Park game?
Yeah, I heard that. And I mean, okay, the Blue Jackets, I mean, they're not a good team. They're not a deep team. They lost all.
He doesn't want to hear it, though.
I know he doesn't want to hear it, and you know what? I think that's what's going to save his job there, because he's holding the players that are there to account.
Yeah.
But Jarmo Kekkonen, he's not going to, if he gets fired, which I don't think is going to be the case. It's an injustice, because that team is not a good team.
No.
And that's on Jarmo, and that's on what they did last year. They had to win a round. They had to make money. I get it. I understand it. I don't agree with it, but okay. But, Tortorella has a right to be pissed off at his team, and they lost 1-0 to the Penguins in overtime on a Brian Rust OT goal. They only had 17 shots, and he was old style Tortorella. It was like there were like 10 Larry Brookses interviewing him.
Yeah, the interesting thing is, and Brian Burke elaborated, and he said it was a dumb question when someone asked him about the 17 shots, but Marek said, hey, the guy's trying to do a job, and he's trying to get a quote. And it's true, the guy is trying to get a quote.
Right.
I mean, maybe the guy should have said, hey, John, 17 shots sucks. Do you agree? Would he like that better? Like, it's just, then he's only going to give you a one-word answer. I mean, these guys do have to do a job, and they do have to get quotes from a coach. And when he's going to act like a child, then they're going to start writing that he's acting like a child. So if that's what Torts wants,
right,
that's what you get.
The Islanders beat the Panthers last night 3-1. Islanders continued to roll. There has been some speculation that they could be in on the Taylor Hall sweepstakes. You're not going to find out anything from Lamoriello. There won't be any rumors until it actually happens. He's better than the KGB when it comes to secrets. But where I question here is Ray Shero trading Hall inside his own division, not because they're going to be in competition with him. But I'm sure that if he gives the Islanders the score that he needs, and remember it'll be probably reuniting Hall with Eberle.
Mm-hmm.
That it's going to cost the Islanders. And I think that there is, just like there is a tax right now, like for the Leafs, if they try to trade for a backup, I think that there's a division tax. I think Lamoriello would have to pay more for Taylor Hall than, say, Arizona, St. Louis, or Colorado would. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think Shearer's going to the Islanders. I don't think he's trading with the Islanders either.
Right.
Right now, Taylor Hall is skating on Pepsi Center ice in Colorado, and it wouldn't shock me if those GMs talk tonight. Wouldn't shock me at all.
No.
And it wouldn't shock me if they come up with a deal tonight. Wouldn't shock me at all. We'll see.
Yeah.
Like, if Taylor Hall gets scratched for this game, I'm not going to be shocked.
Well, I mean, Joe Sakic has the luxury of he can make a trade that would be beneficial to the Devils, that would give the Devils the talent that they require in a deal that wouldn't affect their roster probably by one player. They could trade prospects. Maybe it would cost them, like we've mentioned before, a defenseman like Zadorov, but I think they could get away with, a guy like Connor Timmins. Or one of their other.
I don't think they can get away with Timmins with his injury history. I disagree.
Well, maybe, but I'm saying they would have to probably give him an A prospect, a Timmins, and a draft pick. I think they could do that, and if they did that, it wouldn't affect the chemistry of that team right now. And it's admitting that Hall is a pure rental because they have all these players locked up, but that they're going for it, and that's what makes sense. But
I think Hall wants to be a pure rental right now. I do.
Yes. Yeah, I like we mentioned before when Eck was on, Darren Ferris is his agent. Darren Ferris is not going to agree to a deal before July 1st. He's going. This is not restricted free agency. This is not Mitch Marner where he can afford to wait until September to sort of get it the best deal he possibly can. He's going to wait until July 1st when the bidding goes crazy and get the best deal for his client. That's what an agent has to do and what he should do.
No question. But like I said, let's see if Taylor Hall plays tonight, and let's just see what transpires after that game.
Now, the Lightning beat the Bruins 3-2. The Bruins have lost 5 games in a row. They've been one of the best teams in the league, but they've had a few lulls where they've lost 3 games in a row, and then they come back and they play great. Now 5 games in a row, and it's not like anybody of major consequence is injured. It just seems like they run into these little lulls, and that just seems to be the the pattern of this league right now. Everything is so close. Everything is, there's so much parity right now that even the best teams can lose 3, 4, 5 games in a row. And it's just because, even the bad teams are not so bad.
Yeah, I agree. But look, I mean, you can't make too much of it for Boston. It's a bigger win for Tampa, no question. And it's what Tampa needs. So that's something that's really good for them. I mean, nobody's going to worry about Boston.
No. Now touch on the Leafs game last night briefly. They played.
How'd they do?
They had a 2-1 lead going into the third period.
Somebody screenshot that face, please. Thank you.
Thanks. They had a 2-1 lead going into the third period. Played pretty well. Marner and Tavares combined on a couple goals. And then, as has been the case all year at times, there's a 3 or 4 minute brain cramp where nothing goes right. Anderson can't stop a beach ball, and he's played great lately. But I honestly, this was his 6th game in a row, and I'm not the first person who said, well, this might be a symptom of him getting tired, where, he needed to rest one of these games. He needed to get a couple days off, and instead, 3 games in Western Canada, Vancouver, Calgary, Edmonton, with a day in between. Maybe even though Calgary has won 6 in a row, now 7 in a row, this might have been, if they had a goaltender that they trusted more than Michael Hutchinson as the backup, this would be the game to play him. But they didn't. They played Anderson. He played well the first 2 periods, and then 3 goals on 3 shots in the first, I think, 5 minutes of the third period, and that was it. They lose 4-2.
Why? Here's what I don't understand.
Yeah.
The fan protection of Freddie Anderson in this era is amazing compared to Belfour and Cujo, and those guys sometimes would get destroyed for things that they did in Toronto. Everybody's protecting Freddie Anderson, and it's like, you know what? At some point, things get tough, and at some point, you do have to come through with it. I'm not saying it's ideal. It's not. Well, at some point, you got to come through.
I mean, they criticized Belfour at the end of his first couple years there, he was good. Then the lockout happened, and then when he came back, he was 40 or 41, and he was done. Cujo never got criticism. I mean, that
never. Should I go look up online? Oh
no, I don't think. Well, I mean, I have a pretty good memory of that time. It's like he got them to the conference final in '99, and that was not a good team. He got them to the conference final with Matt Sundin and a number of injuries.
Matt Sundin got criticism from you.
Matt Sundin should have been criticized because Matt Sundin, I think, was a vastly overrated player, but that's my personal belief. And believe me, I take a lot of heat from it from Leaf fans because they don't agree. But they never won anything with Matt Sundin as the captain. But I'm just saying that plus, and Sheldon Keefe has done, and we'll get off the Leafs after this. Sheldon Keefe is doing a lot of experimenting, seeing, throwing some.
All right, here's a quote from Cujo. Ready?
Yeah.
This is from his book.
Yeah.
This is talking about the playoffs. Oh, so I don't know who's doing the interview, but it's sports. It's on the Score, and he says, a friend of mine who played goalie at the pro level said it was always like walking on a wire at a time. Is it true for that job? You have to be living in the moment every day. And he goes, oh yeah, you know how bad it can be and how embarrassed you can be. Like when I drive to Toronto, you can cut the tension with a knife. You can feel it driving in. It's the playoffs, Game 7 against Ottawa, and you're thinking, oh, man, I better not let one in from center tonight or I'll be roasted.
Right, but he didn't.
No, but he knew, though.
Oh, yeah. I mean,
nobody roasts Freddie Anderson. That's my point.
Right, because he's all they've got, and B, they know he steals games for them.
When did Leaf fans get nice? That's what I want to know. They never used to be.
Well,
when did they get nice?
They weren't. They have not.
Morello's not nice, but he's not hiding it.
Who is?
Morello.
Oh yeah, well,
the Toronto Greenhouse isn't nice, and he's not hiding it.
Well, Russ, they're in a situation now where Freddie is all that they've got, and Freddie is one of the better goaltenders in the league, and they're better.
Where does he rank in the league, though? That's another one where
I'd say he's a top 10 goaltender.
Last year, he was top 5 for half the year, and then for the second half of the year, he was probably bottom 5.
Right, because he got exhausted
every year.
Right.
At some point,
you cannot play a goaltender 60 games in this league anymore. You can't do it.
Some still do, so you can't say you can't because some do.
Do they win? Because
somehow Fleury does.
The teams that win Stanley Cups don't play their goalies more than 50 to 55 games.
Well, but again, Marc-Andre Fleury played more than that and made it to the Stanley Cup.
They didn't win. I'm talking about St. Louis with Binnington and Allen, Pittsburgh with Fleury and Murray, Washington with Grubauer and Holtby.
That's the norm. I give it to you, but sometimes it's not the norm, and sometimes the goalie has to overcome that. And everybody in Leafland just seems to be like, well, we're going to protect Freddie here because he can't do that. And it's like, well, you know what? At some point you have to.
Funky Cold Zadina says Larry Murphy agrees with Russ. That's good. But one more thing, and then we'll move off of the Leafs. So Sheldon Keefe has been doing some experimenting with their roster, putting Riley with Tyson Barrie. I think that's had up and down results. I mean, Barrie, we knew Barrie was a challenged defensive player. He's an offense first guy. That's just what he is. A lot of people called him a right-handed Jake Gardner. I think that's unfair to Tyson Barrie because Jake Gardner is minus 18 with Carolina right now. How does that deal look? But what they did yesterday was in the first part of the year, they had Kapanen replacing Zach Hyman on the line with Tavares and Marner. And it was he played terribly. He can't play the off wing. He was ineffective. He was thrown off. They moved him back to the right side. He immediately started scoring, and he played well. Last night, with Andreas Janssen out, they didn't want to play Pontus Aberg in the top six, so they switched Kapanen, put him on the left side with Matthews and Nylander. That line was invisible. They were terrible. They hardly did anything. Matthews rung one off the post on a power play, but that line was non-existent. And this is the issue. I think they see Kapanen as a top six forward, but they have Marner on one right wing on one line, and they have Nylander on the other line as the right winger, and Kapanen can't play the left side on either one of them. So it's either do you trade Kapanen, which I don't think that they're going to get full value for him, or do you wait until the offseason, play him in your top nine, and then maybe you trade Nylander, which I think I've been championing for about 2 years.
Yeah, I mean, look, you don't trade either one of those guys for a backup goalie. We agree on that.
No,
and you don't really trade him for a defenseman unless that defenseman has term and will be around for a while.
Right.
You don't do that either. So they're in a bit of a spot right now. This is the Leafs. Right now, all eyes are on Kyle Dubas. It's all on Dubas now because Babcock's out of there. That excuse is gone. Sheldon Keefe is there, so that excuse is gone. And now all you have left is a cap-strapped team and a GM who has to dig his way out of it. That's really where you're at.
Yeah, I agree. And
what odds do you give the Leafs of making the playoffs right now today?
I think it's 50-50. I mean,
what do you think it was before the season started?
About 90-10. And I was thinking that unless Matthews or Anderson or Tavares went down for the season, that they were a lock. But glass half empty. They're out on the outside looking in right now, and I think they're playing better under Keefe. Their special teams are better, but they're still having these brain cramps where they don't play 60 minutes, and they get killed in the times that they don't play the right way. Glass is half full. They're 2 points out of second place in a division that's really close. But do I think Tampa Bay is going to get on track?
They'll get hot at some point,
right? They have to. There's just too much talent there. But I'm skeptical about Montreal. I'm skeptical still about Buffalo. And in the end, I think Toronto is better than those two teams. And then it's basically battling Florida for either third or one of the wild card spots. But that's not a guarantee because right now, I didn't think Mike Babcock was getting fired. So, right.
Right now it's a tough spot.
Now we'll take some questions in the chat just to touch on a couple other games. 1-0 Vancouver over Carolina in overtime. 43 saves for Jakob Markstrom. Again, this is the thing with Carolina. There's talent. There's depth on defense. There's not enough scoring. And I continue to believe that. I'm not a particular fan of their goaltending.
I'm sure the hope is like Netchis and Svechnikov, who was hot at the beginning of the year. I don't think he's been hot lately.
Right.
Would stay that way, and then maybe that would be their scoring, but it's not happening. So
yeah, I mean, Aho's been scoring of late, but I think they miss Justin Williams, and I think they need scoring help up front to be able to really. I mean, they're sort of in that, they could make the playoffs. They could be in the top 3. They could be in the wild card. They could be out. It's like they're really in that middle.
Svechnikov has still been scoring, but not every game. Like on last game he didn't. On the third they didn't. So it looks like when he doesn't score, they lose. That's what it looks like.
But it's tough to depend on a 19, 20-year-old.
More than a point a game, though. And
I know
he had a great run, and he's got 21 assists. I just thought he slowed down a little bit, but I forgot about the 2-assist game against Edmonton, that great defense. So, but still, it does seem like they're dependent on him, which does show their offense isn't great.
Yeah, and I'm not going to let down Flamester because I was saving the best for last.
Well, hold on, then. If you're going to do that,
okay.
Apparently the Sharks had a lead that they choked away to the Rangers, and of course everybody's bringing up goaltending. This is what's going to happen with them. Unless they trade for one, which they might, that is their only way out of this.
Well, okay, let's think outside the box here, because right now Martin Jones is untradeable. He's got long-term left on his deal, and for 2 years now his save percentage has been under 900. Aaron Dell is a $1.9 million backup, but he's a UFA at the end of the year. So I could see them making a deal for a goaltender who would be a rental and trading Dell in the deal. So I can think of a couple names. Both of them are injured right now, but I think they would be upgrades before February 24th if they're healthy. One is Craig Anderson, and the other is Jimmy Howard. That might be the only – I mean, there are other options out there, but I think those might be the two most affordable, because Ottawa's not contending for a playoff spot, and obviously Detroit is not. They probably would take Dell back, and you'd probably have to throw them a good prospect or a draft pick. I know that San Jose doesn't – San Jose already has traded their first-round pick to Ottawa in, I believe, the Carlson deal. So – that might be a hindrance in getting Anderson, because Ottawa doesn't want San Jose to be good. So maybe
what I'll do, I'll call and I'll offer Georgiev for LeBanc and Dell.
I don't think they'll trade LeBanc.
He's a New York guy, though, and
I know,
and they need a goalie to make the playoffs. That's clear.
And that's the motivation for the Rangers, because, he's making $1 million this year. He's probably going to get a bigger deal. He's a good young player. I think that's
the Sharks may not be able to pay him anyhow.
Right.
The Rangers can pay him, and Dell would be that other goalie we were talking about that could be the guy left unprotected.
Yeah, that's almost cutting off your nose to spite your face.
I have to do that, Mike. I mean, their seasons will go down the tubes with this goaltending. It looks that way.
Right. And that's, from what I've heard just via other reports, that was one of the main motivations, that, they couldn't make a deal. So they went the coaching direction,
right?
And they're up against the cap. So there's no flexibility there.
The coach can't stop the puck, though.
Say that again.
The coach can't stop the puck.
No. I mean,
you have to slap on the pads and stop the puck.
Yeah, that's a good point. The other game that I want to talk about before we take some questions is the good old Edmonton Oilers, who, I'm just looking and making sure.
Now, did you watch the midday show with Brian Burke talking about the Oilers?
I did not.
He brought up the same point we've been bringing up the whole year.
Okay. And they, unlike the previous game where they rallied to tie and then gave up goals late, in this game, Minnesota led 4-3, scored 2 goals in the third period, and then held on for a 6-5 victory. Again, this team cannot win when it's only McDavid and Draisaitl.
Right. Basically, Burke said what we basically said, and that is, if those two guys don't score and goaltending isn't super fantastic, they're not winning.
Right. And Mike Smith allowed 6 goals on 26 shots. Now they got some production out of some of their secondary, Gaetan Haas. They got a goal and an assist out of James Neal. But it's, Draisaitl, a goal, McDavid, a goal and an assist. It's always them. And if they don't carry that team on their back, they don't win. And they're just
– it would be a slow bleed out. And now they're at the point where 1, 2 team. I mean, Calgary's ready to get to grab. I mean, they're ready to fall out. That's what's happening.
Right.
They're that close. Calgary's ready to overtake them. And who's the other? Vancouver is 4 points away from them. It's not going to be long.
No, it's not. All right. Just a couple questions in the chat here. I mean, when we were mentioning Detroit, Michael points out that Detroit would most likely have to retain salary in any players they trade. Well, this is the thing: if they're trading guys with the rentals, guys like Mike Green or Trevor Daley, you're probably right. Daley's making 3-1, Green's making 5-3. They would probably retain salary. They can retain salary, and I believe 2, or it could be as many as 3 players. And also Howard's making $4 million this year, so they could retain up to $2 million. On the longer term guys, the guys I believe that Yzerman would love to move, there's no way they're retaining salary. They're not going to retain salary for 3 more years of Justin Abdelkader.
Right.
Or 2 more years of Franz Nielsen, because that affects the bottom line going forward. 1 year, that's fine, because you're retaining that salary to be able to fit it in on other teams. They might even take salary on from other teams. If I'm going to write about this today, but if Toronto wants to make a move where they add a defenseman, or they want to bring up Timothy Liljegren from the minors and think he's ready, and they would be looking to, say, move Cody Cece's $4.5 million contract out, and they'd be looking to send him somewhere where they give up an asset to have that team basically take his salary on for the remaining part of the season. A team like Detroit could do that. A team like New Jersey could do that. And that would open up cap space for them to go out and get the backup goaltender or make other moves. I think there's more of a possibility of them doing that than trading a guy like Kapanen or Andreas Janssen.
I wonder if Detroit would make a trade with Chicago for one of their goalies, because they're not going to need both. They're 5th worst team in the league. Leonard's on a 1-year deal or a 2-year deal?
Yeah, but there's a lot of he's on a 1-year deal, but there's a lot of speculation that a extension is going to be announced after the new year for Leonard. Yeah.
So I wonder if Detroit would take Crawford. I kind of think they would.
For what purpose, though? Just as a dump?
No, because Crawford has still a couple of years left in him. You do have to have a goalie there. He's better than Jimmy Howard. At some point, you're going to have some product to show the fans. Well,
Crawford could be another one of those guys that say a San Jose, if they're looking for that playoff tested goaltender. I mean, there you go. So, but again, Chicago would have to retain salary in that instance, and I don't know how willing they'd be to do that. It would have to be
Chicago. I mean, it's ugly for them right now. I mean,
Funky says he would rather they. Sorry, no, not that one. Here we go.
I'm not saying Crawford's a long-term thing, but you're going to have somebody play goal, even while you're not a great team, and Crawford would be good for that.
Yeah. Funky says he would rather trade Athanasiou.
Yeah, of course. You're not there. They're not trading it. For one thing, Yzerman's not trading Athanasiou for Georgiev. He's not doing that.
No, and he's not, and this is the thing. And Funky knows this, and most people know this. Athanasiou is probably not one of Yzerman's favorites, right. And he's a arbitration-eligible restricted free agent. I believe 2 years away from unrestricted free agency.
And he's going to walk wherever he is.
Right. He's represented by Darren Ferris.
He is not re-signing.
He's not re-signing. He's going. Now, here you go. Esmir, I'm glad you brought this up. because I've heard the name being floated around as well. PK Subban apparently is on the trading block. How unlikely is this to happen? Well,
very unlikely,
but not impossible. Let me say, because
nothing's impossible.
Nothing's impossible. Russ and I will Russ will recall we were in Vancouver, and the night of the first round of the draft, the big rumor going around was that Toronto was trading for PK Subban. Now the thing was that Nashville would have to retain salary. Subban is making $9 million for this year and the next 2 years.
Right.
So that would have been impossible for the Leafs to do. They needed Poile to retain salary. He wouldn't. And then obviously the deal came up with New Jersey, where New Jersey gave up Santini and a draft pick, and they took all $9 million. Okay. So that's why he's in New Jersey. The ball has been passed on Subban in terms of retaining salary. If New Jersey does want to move him, they're going to have to retain salary. I'm not saying $4.5 million, which is 50%, but they're going to have to make him a $6 million defenseman.
I'll give you a deal.
Okay.
And this will include retained salary. Middlestat and Bogosian for Subban.
I don't know whether the Sabres have interest. And
I mean, it would certainly get rid of a problem. It definitely would upgrade, and then they could definitely trade Scandella because he'd be the next to go.
Right.
And that would give him a nice upgrade. The Devils would deal with Bogosian because they'll find a bottom pair role for him, and that's fine. That won't be an issue.
And maybe they re-sign
a player out of it.
He's from Long Island, so
yes.
New
York.
I mean, that's not out of the realm.
It's going to have to be a trade like that.
Yeah, I mean, like say for example, if it's, and this is the thing, New Jersey's not dumping him.
No.
They want something back.
And that's what Middlestat would be the guy, but they're also going to take Bogosian
right
off the hands of the Sabres to do that.
Now, if it's a team like Toronto, if it's a team like, think of the teams that out there that really need defensive help. Subban is
not going to give you much defensive help, though. That's the thing. If you need offensive help, you're hopeful.
Well, no, I'm saying, Toronto needs help on the blue line.
Yes, but he is not a good defensive player at this point in time.
That's the point I'm making. He is not the type of defenseman. Remember, the Leafs moved on to Tyson Barrie after Subban. So adding Subban, if you trade Cody Ceci and something in a deal, and the something would have to be really good, obviously, to get Subban, then you have two defensemen who don't play defense in right. Subban and Barrie. So that would.
But you probably could put Subban and Dahlin together and put them together on the power play, and you might have something there.
Yes. So that's interesting speculation. I think the Devils.
People that Zadina will say no, but whatever. I don't care.
Yeah. Michael says, do you see Vegas trading Cody Eakin?
Is he a UFA after this year?
Yes, he is.
Yeah, I think that's possible. They like him, but I think that's possible. I'm sure if Washington had the wherewithal, they'd probably like him back because he is their kind of player. Cody Eakin has a value. He is a bottom six guy. He plays tough minutes. He gets you decent goals. Yeah, I think there's something they could do with Cody Eakin.
Now,
they might trade him.
He's 28 years old. He's making a little less than $4 million a year, and he's only got 7 points in 24 games. So they probably have to – and they don't want to eat anything in terms of salary because they're up against it. So they're looking for cap relief.
Right. So it's going to be Cody Eakin and a draft pick to somebody.
Right. Let's see here. A couple more, and then we'll end the show. Flamester says TJ Brody to the Leafs.
He wishes.
Well, honestly, and I know right now things have not gone as expected for both Kerfoot and Barry. Barry did not play well under Babcock, but I think he's playing better under Keefe. And Kerfoot hasn't scored now in like a dozen games. I like Kerfoot as a player. As a third line center, paying him $3.5 million is not terrible. I think he's a smart player. So I think he's struggling right now. But the deal that was talked about for Kadri, that Kadri blocked, was with Calgary, and the deal was Brody and Jankowski. And Jankowski's got 1 point in like 30 games. And Brody, I mean, thank the Lord that, the problem that he had where he passed out on the ice in practice, that it's nothing serious. He's back, but he's not having a great year. The deal that they made with Colorado was a much better deal for the Leafs than the one that they would have made with Calgary. So, Flamester says, I'll give you Jankowski too. Great. Thank you. Thank you for being magnanimous there, Flamester. That's wonderful. All right. We'll end it there. We have some interesting games happening.
I want to mention this. Yesterday, there was a game postponed in the OHL. The Ice Dogs game was postponed because Tucker Tynan, the goalie, got cut in the leg by a skate.
Yeah.
And he was bleeding out. And luckily they saved his life. And so we wish him a speedy recovery, man. That's dangerous stuff because you hit the wrong, nerve in your leg. I mean, there is a large blood supply there.
Yeah.
And
if you hit the I don't know if
the carotid artery goes.
No, but I mean, with Malarchuk, it hit his carotid, and the trainer, the Sabres trainer, is the one who saved his life. I mean, apparently both the Niagara Ice Dogs training staff and London's training staff helped out and saved this kid's life. And there is a video out there, and I'd like to say this: there is a place in hell for people like the person who was caught on video yelling at the goaltender who had been Tynan, who had been hurt. I watched about 3 seconds of it and turned it off because
I didn't even watch it.
Yeah, it really made me mad. It's like, I mean, my God, this kid almost died on the ice, and I don't know what the hell this guy was thinking, but it's just sickening.
Yeah, there's a lot of arteries in your leg, so the blood supply is pretty great.
Yeah, and then I know that like the one artery that's on the inside of your leg, like when people have open heart surgeries, they take that artery from the leg and then use it in your heart because of the biggest vein in your biggest artery in your heart.
It's pretty scary, but yes, both of those crews did an amazing job, and they saved that kid's life.
Yeah, and
we're thankful, man. That's a time that could have been really bad.
Yeah. All right. As I said, there's some good games on the weekend. Obviously, the one I'll be focusing on is Matthews versus McDavid, Toronto versus the Femoral. That's right. I failed medical school there, Michael. And
I never went, so my mother was sad about that. But
yes, there you go, Dr. Cohen. There you go. Toronto versus Edmonton, McDavid versus Matthews.
Actually, you want to know something?
I have a feeling this is going to be a really defensive affair. It's going to be like a 2-1 close checking game.
Tonight's game, the Devils Avalanche, will be highly watched.
Yes.
It really will be.
And remember, I mean, today's the 13th. At this time next week, the trade freeze will be in place. So stay tuned on Hockey Buzz, because I think we're going to see a deal or two. Maybe not anything of a major blockbuster, but I think we'll see a deal or two before the trade freeze. Maybe this will be the opportunity for Bogosian to get moved. Or
I'll give you the worst watch game. It could be. Sorry, the worst watch game will be Rangers at Ducks Saturday at 4 p.m. in Anaheim. That's brutal, man. Nobody's watching that.
So it's a 1 in the afternoon game.
There. Nobody's watching that game.
No, not even Mrs. Dallas Eakins. Okay. For Russ Cohen, I'm Michael Agello. Thanks for watching, and remember,